Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is October the 21st, and we were not online yesterday. We had an impromptu day off. I had an impromptu day off. I got to tell you, I feel like kind of like the movie Office Space, where the main character, Peter, walks in and he's talking to the Bobs, and they go, Peter, we've noticed you've been missing work a little bit lately. And he says, well, I wouldn't say I've been missing it, Bob. I'll be real honest. I didn't miss sitting here in this chair yesterday, and mainly because I got to go hang out with my kids, and we had a global event that affected me very locally. The Amazon Web Services servers are the ones that manage the broadcast software called Restream that I use to be able to hit all the platforms we do. So it goes to Rumble, and it goes to YouTube, and it goes to X, it goes to the other places out there. And if you guys are not following us, then you should. And if you guys are worried about catching the replay, or if you have stream issues, you can always check it out at kyleseraphin.com. Go get our Spotify channel, and that's where I upload. But what I figured is, you know what? I don't want to try to fight through something when it seems pretty clear that the message is take a day. So we did. If you guys like that, if you guys had a moment to take a day as well, and maybe you guys said, oh, we had some withdrawals, but it reminded you that there's other things out there in the world. Great stuff. That's what I did. And last night, my cousin Will had twin girls. They gave birth to two, or his wife gave birth to two twin girls, and they were healthy and happy. And that was a good reminder, too, that there are a lot more important things than politics and the silliness and the protest clown show that went on. I went down. I actually drove down to the No Kings rally, not during the scheduled hours, but during the after party. What I wanted to see was what happened after dark. Did people get spicy? Did they get stupid? Did they get out there and get violent? And what we found out was that they did not. My buddy George Hill had a different take on it. His take was, isn't it interesting that people seem to clock in and clock out almost like these protests were paid? I didn't have that instinct. I think that's what people in America do when there's a sense of law and order. I think that's what people do when they want to go out and make their voices heard, however dumb that voice is. There's people that gather for crowds all the time that do things that make no sense to me whatsoever. They want to spend tons of money and go listen to, some washed up 70s rocker who's barely putting on the show that he used to. And they want to spend their money on it, knock themselves out. That's what you're supposed to be able to do in America. So the fact that people gathered here at the State House and went around in the streets of Austin, Texas, and they did so in many other cities around the country, great. It feels like cosplay to me, though. Cosplay is costume play. That's where it's like sort of a sexual fetish where you dress up like something. It feels like LARPing, which is live action role play, where you pretend to be something and you go and play out this fantasy role. LARPers are oftentimes sort of like Ren Fair performers that you guys have seen, the Renaissance festivals that come out where everyone puts on a cloak and carries a sword around and some sort of armor, and they pretend to be something that is not real for them. That's what I saw. And to make it something that it's not, to act like it's not a grassroots movement of a bunch of entitled people that are pretending and attempting to recapture their youth and the protest energy they felt back when they didn't have responsibilities. I see a very direct correlation, and I named the episode accordingly, although I might actually change the name of this episode after we're done. It seems to me that the same people that participated because it felt good, and they felt like they were rising up against and they were struggling against something. The people that participated in the civil rights movements and wanted to go out there and march for justice, and they wanted to stop the war in Vietnam and all of this sort of energy that existed. Some of the people felt like they missed out on that maybe because they were doing something else, like they had a job. And some of the people that have participated in these No Kings rallies are trying to recapture their youth. But overwhelmingly, the age was very high in these protests, and the movement of people's mindset was not at all. It was people who were basically virtue signaling to their friends and neighbors. It was a gathering of a bunch of old folks that ended up going home so that they could catch the early bird special for dinner. And I'm not mad at them for going and catching the early bird special. I'd rather eat early as well. I don't much care to be out late. So good for them. They showed up on time and they left, and the cities were not destroyed on account of it. I think the numbers were incredibly low compared to what they claimed. There was a claim that there were 7 million people in the streets, and those were all self-reported. And what the accurate estimates seem to indicate is that it was between 1 and 1.5 million across an entire country of 340, 350 million people. So it wasn't exactly what you thought it would have been when you heard news coverage of it. So we're going to cover the No Kings protest. We're also going to cover something that I found absolutely shocking. Having 1 million people or 2 million people show up in a country of 300 plus million people, it's actually not that impressive. Finding out that 42 million people in this country, roughly 12%, maybe 15% of our entire nation is on food stamps and on subsidized food costs, that is truly incredible. There's a story that I have out of Oregon that we're going to talk about, which I think this is the real scary thing. Forget No Kings. Forget people protesting Donald Trump and the sort of false claim that these people are communists and anarchists and they're a real threat to the nation, that they hate America. They probably do, but they live in America, so they don't really hate it that much. We can be ashamed of them and think that they're silly, and at the same time not be worried about them. Finding out that maybe 1 in 6 people in the state of Oregon are on subsidized food vouchers is maybe one of the scariest things that I found out this morning. It's over 750,000 people in that state. And it's a pretty prosperous state from driving through it. I mean, Oregon's a beautiful place and it's not cheap to live there. So finding that out really bothers me. And learning that 42 million people across this country are unable to provide for their own families, such as they are, isn't that something? And they're about to shut that down. A week ago, some notices went out saying that they might be withholding benefits from the federal government because we're shutting it down. I have no idea why the federal government is involved in feeding individual human beings in communities that should be part of communities and neighborhoods and churches and other sort of organizations that should be looking out for them. To find out that our federal government does it the least efficient way possible, ain't that something? So we're going to get into all of those things and more. And some of this stuff is going to irritate some of you. And I do think that one of the biggest scams that is going on and one of the scariest things is that a lot of this sentiment against our neighbors and against those around us and some of even the existential threat that the boomer protesters were all worried about, a lot of that stuff is that they were being conned into it through very specific organized propaganda that's being run outside of our nation. And that is truly terrifying. The fact that we have nation state actors running enormous bot farms that are crafting the thoughts of weak-minded people that think the internet is real, even though they have all the evidence not. The worst people online are the youngest people and the oldest people. And I find that in my sort of power range, somewhere between the age of 35 and let's call it 60-something, early 60s. Of course, there are exceptions on both sides of that coin, but there's a power age of people that both have an analog experience and a digital experience, and we know how to mix both. I've seen so many people think that because it was posted on Facebook, it must be real. And that is a uniquely boomer thing to do. But I also know that there's a bunch of people that are younger than me that think because it's on Reddit and that there's some thread of people that are commenting on it, that it also is real. And in reality, both of those platforms are completely inundated by AI-run Chinese bots. And so that was a story we covered last week, and I'm going to retouch on it again so that it is front of mind awareness whenever you are thinking that something is real. You should really be asking questions. People in the street, real. Things that you're seeing swarming online, not necessarily real. And this morning I woke up to find that there were dozens and dozens of videos of angry black women who are talking about maybe doing things as aggressive as violence and killing people if EBT benefits are shut down. And for whatever that cause is that is making them react that way, they are actual human beings. These are not AI-generated videos. These are human beings that have become so radicalized in their entitlement to have access to the government benefits that I don't think they would not get aggressive. And based on the fact that we've had such a soft hand on people doing things that are dangerous and illegal because they feel entitled, it wouldn't shock me to say that sometime in early November, in the next maybe 2 weeks, we might actually see some real violence in some of the urban areas if we shut down some of the benefits that our federal government has been given, which are often referred to as entitlements. They're only called entitlements, as far as I can tell, is because people feel entitled to them. So that's what we're going to do today. That's where we're going to go today. And we're going to start off, before we do, by talking about ways that you might want to protect your digital signature. If you feel like you're on the radar of the government, or whether it be that or big tech, which we found out how much AWS handles, data brokers, cyber criminals, you name it. There are all kinds of people that are looking for a piece of your data, and sometimes they screw up your entire day because they fail at it. They're fighting for a piece of that footprint, and you can take control with a product from Silent. The Faraday bags they make block wireless signals, cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, RFID, and near-field communications, all the things that can be used to track you. Silent is spelled Silent, S-L-N-T, with no vowels in it, which is kind of interesting. I don't know why they did that. It's the same technology that special operations teams use. It's the same things that we use when I was working counterintelligence, because the Chinese or other threats, nation states, they can all use this stuff. They hoover up your data, and then they surveil you. So if you want to avoid surveillance, if you want to secure your comms, if you want to make sure that you are the one in charge of where your signals go and where they don't, they've got really great products, and they're really well designed, which is super nice. When I set up to go out to the No Kings rally, I took that Silent backpack, the E3 Everyday Faraday backpack, with me. It held everything that I wanted, including a gas mask, because I thought it might get spicy. Of course, it did not. A riot helmet will fit in there, including all my digital gear in a protected way, and even a phone that I kept in a phone sleeve that just in case I needed to go on grid with a not normally used phone, I have that opportunity. Drop your phone into a Silent Faraday sleeve, which I'm going to do right now as we get started on this program. You could drop right off the grid completely. You will not be interrupted by outside signals and outside calls, and it's slnt.com/KYLE. Again, silent.com/Kyle, silent.com/Kyle. Use the promo code Kyle for 15% off, and anything they make, I've seen, and I touched all their products when I was at SHOT Show. All really, really good, independently third-party verified, and verified by me. So let's get into today's program, and we're going to have some fun right now. And some of you in our live chat this morning are already complaining about whether or not there is going to be a spinning wheel of death and whether or not things are working on the internet. Yeah, we're going to talk about that first, because isn't it interesting how much of our life is tied to one specific company who has massive amounts of federal contracts, and they are Amazon Web Services. There was also a quick question in there about whether or not I wore body armor. When I went down there, I did wear body armor. I just wore level 3 stuff. I didn't want to wear plates. I think that's a little bit too much. We always assess our own risks. I used to do it for a living and walk around in crowds. Level 3A has always kept me alive so far, so that's what I did. We're going to talk about the major vulnerabilities that were exposed when Amazon's global internet outage happened. And the interesting thing about this whole story is very little blame has been placed. I'm going to read some of the stuff from CNN's coverage. Amazon says that its systems are back online after a connectivity issue persisted throughout Monday, but reports of problems with Amazon's cloud computing services unit at AWS continue. Before the latest rounds of issues, Amazon said that it had fully mitigated an earlier outage, and then, of course, it turned around and it did not. Several popular websites, including Snapchat, Facebook, Fortnite, were impacted. Cryptocurrency exchanges like Coinbase and AI firm Perplexity also reported issues. One expert said that the impact of that disruption yesterday could cost in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Ain't that something? A lot of different websites were ground to a halt. There are tons of different things that were not able to be used. This show was one of them. And we are one of the smallest little pieces, but I would say that we lost a revenue stream yesterday. Every time that we're not on, there's a revenue loss there. They said they confirmed an increased error rate and latency for multiple AWS services on US East 1 region. I saw a meme yesterday that was put out by Elon Musk, who has a vested stake in other sort of cloud computing and internet services. And it showed this huge scaffolding. And it was all a bunch of blocks, and it was a kind of like one of those towers your kids may build up. And on that block tower, all the way at the top, was all this elaborate sort of, intricate towers and things like this that were all balancing on top of each other. And it went down, and there was a firm foundation. And under the firm foundation, there were like 2 pegs. And one of the pegs was very, very, very thin, and that was labeled US East 1 region AWS cloud services. Our modern world is built on a pretty fragile infrastructure, it turns out. And I think a lot of people found that out yesterday for the first time, because we don't see massive outages. And I do think that we probably will see some of these in the near future. And interestingly enough, the Chinese have the ability to crash those things probably at a moment's notice. They've been spending years investing in our infrastructure, understanding how they work. They've spent significant amounts of resources sending tens of thousands of co-opted reporting parties that would go back and do tours of infrastructure, whatever they can find, whether it be our university systems, whether it be our water, our power grids, our public safety. I did a Twitter space last night talking to some people. I still call it Twitter, so bear with me here. There were a lot of folks that probably don't know that one of the things that we uncovered and didn't do anything about, by the way, because there's no law being broken. One of the things I did at the FBI were called defensive briefings, where we would go out to municipalities and to county level governments and ask them about Chinese delegations that would be visiting all of their structures: power, water, public safety, 911 systems, EMS and deployments, stuff like that. And you find out that all of these infrastructure systems are vulnerable for various reasons. Some of them because they're so old they've never been updated and they have minimal security. Some of them because physically they can be easily compromised. I'll think of the Fairfax County water treatment plant that I went to. My partner and I go and ask for a tour of it. And we said, can you give us the exact same tour that you gave to Chinese delegations? They're like, sure. So they walk us through. They took us up on the catwalks to where the reclaimed wastewater was after it had been treated and before it went out to some of the pumping stations. So you're standing there at the tail end of the filtration process, and it's just huge vats of water, and you're walking in catwalks over them. And if I had a biological weapon or a chemical agent that I wanted to just drop into the water right there, I could have, and nobody would have noticed. They were minimal cameras. And while I'm standing up on that catwalk, which is maybe like, probably 15 feet off the ground, and the big tanks and everything else is going on underneath me. So there's water and there's noises and there's a bunch of fluid moving around, and they got whatever the systems, and there's all these different kind of different tanks doing whatever the processes are that are going on. I look out and there's a huge grass sort of leach field looking thing. It's just open grass. It's a floodplain kind of thing. And I said, what's that? And they go, oh, that's just some of the additional sort of buffer property that we have for our water filtration area. And I go, no. What is that big hole in the fence over there? And there was a hole that was big enough to drive a truck through. And it was chain link fencing and barbed wire that had been knocked down, and then it had been cleared and it had not been replaced. So it was sort of jagged and messed up. And it went off into a wood line. And beyond the wood line, maybe, like a third of a mile away were roads and parking lots and all the things that you expect in a municipal area. And so I asked the guy, I was like, could somebody just walk up here? And he's like, yeah, but they probably wouldn't. They'd have to know that there was a fence hole here. And I went, didn't you tell me that you gave Chinese delegations the same exact walk that I'm on? It's the first thing that I noticed was this massive hole in the basic physical security, that you didn't actually have a coherent perimeter around this facility. You could just walk up. Somebody probably cut that. There was not any obvious reason why that thing had a hole in it. So somebody at some point walked through the wood line and probably cut through it, and they did nothing because they're a municipal government, and government does a crappy job at almost everything, even when it's your local government. This is Fairfax County, folks. This is the home to probably, 30 or 40% of the American workforce. For the federal government, a huge number of people that are congressional staffers, that work at the Pentagon, that work in all the different government executive agencies, they all live in Fairfax. A huge chunk of them do. The commute from Fairfax into DC was enormous. Or they went to other sort of, government buildings that were spread around Northern Virginia and Maryland. All of those could be compromised. And that was just one facility in one really, really critical location. There are tens of thousands of these penetration tests that have been done, specifically by the Chinese, but I have to imagine other governments did them as well. I just didn't work on them. We found out that Amazon has the same problems. What if you can't send emails and you rely on that for security? What if you're unable to do the basic searches, like your 911 system has an automatic routing so that every phone call that comes in, like we talked about on our local show the other day, one of our listeners called and said, hey, I did some kind of digging on this and found out that when the phone calls are routed in, they all ping just a few servers that give the GPS location and the address location associated with that phone number. What happens when those get backed up? What happens when you have 100,000 Chinese bot farm type server farms that are hanging outside of major cities? And we found 5 of them, and estimates range between 60 and 100 more of them existing in this US. Then what? Yesterday was just a little taste of what might happen if a little piece of the internet shut down, and it created billions of dollars worth of damage. So when we see people crying about, oh, Donald Trump is a king and he's doing policies that I don't like, even though he ran on those policies, even though he explicitly stated what he was going to do when he was elected, to watch people gather in the streets and be upset about those. And in the meantime, those people have absolutely no idea what the real threats to their happiness or their safety or their livelihood looks like. It's fairly incredible to watch how easily misled we are. We have a long-standing analogy here about the attention span of the human population in America is a lot like a cat chasing a laser pointer. As long as the dot is moving, we'll run after it. And we'll even celebrate it for ourselves when we capture the dot, even though the dot's not there, right? So if you're a good laser pointer handler and you're really screwing with a cat, you'll take it and you'll shine it on the carpet and it'll attack. And then you'll shine on the carpet, you'll move it and it'll attack. And what you'll do is every once in a while, you got to let the cat win. So when they attack, you turn off the laser pointer and they think that it's under their hands. And they look and there's nothing there. And then you go again. We're chasing vaporware. We're chasing sort of like feigned outrage. And it's not real. And the real threats completely elude people. They are completely out there. It's a long-standing sort of argument that I make here on this podcast that the problems we have date back 120 years. So even though I'm talking about boomers reliving their youth and my frustration with that generation, by the way, that is a widespread frustration across people who are in Gen X and are millennials and even younger. I'm sure of it. There was a very different bargain that happened. I don't actually think, I've actually come to the same conclusion that Ron Coleman shared with me on this podcast. I don't actually think that boomers are the root cause of any of this stuff. It's pretty clear to me that if the problem is 120 years old, you can't blame people who are in their 60s and their 70s and their 80s for it. That's not reasonable or fair. But I do think that boomers represent that generation. Of course, if you're listening to this and you don't identify with any of the crazy things that I'm talking about, fine, I'm not talking about you. I have found that there's a pretty strong subset of people that immediately get triggered by hearing the name of their generation. And I'll find them on social media and they say things that'll be like, do better than that. Don't call out all boomers. And then you go look their profile and you're like, hey, didn't you just call out like all of Gen X, or didn't you call out all of Gen Z and make all these nasty statements about people? It's just like, look, we generalize a little bit because it helps us get a grip on the problem. But it doesn't mean you're specifically part of it. So try not to be emotional about hearing one of these issues. What's wild to me is that if it goes back 120 years, that means that we actually have to blame people from the so-called greatest generation. And that's what Ron Coleman actually said, that they went to war and they came back and they got all these accolades for liberating the world and making America free and creating safety for democracy to prosper, or whatever other kind of nonsense was sold. And then they just kind of checked out. They didn't actually maintain the really, really important work of raising children, which is far more important than fighting a war, because that's how the long-term war is lost. And we've been defeated by ourselves and our own suicidal empathy. And some of the things happened on the earliest watch. But one of the folks that are the studies that I've been really upset about is the lack of Christianity in the United States, the decline of Christianity in the United States. So I want to get to that in a second, but I started digging into graphs and charts of decline of people representing themselves as Christian households in America. And they do dramatically decline starting in about 1970, to the point where in 1970, 90% of households in the US identified themselves as Christian. And by the time I was born, 10 years later, 11 years later, they say only 70%. So we lost 1 in 5 households as identifying as Christians. 1970 to 1981, the parents and the people that were young adults at that time were boomers. That's who was there. That's the people. But that also tells me that their parents failed to properly give them the tools and the values, and that maybe America was so safe and maybe it was so comforting and comfortable and prosperous that they didn't realize that they did the thing that we see throughout the book of Judges. that we see in the cycle throughout the Old Testament. If you follow the entirety of it, it's this cycle of man finds God, man does as God commands, man prospers, man starts believing through pride and hubris, which the Greeks called it, but pride is the original sin. Man starts believing that he himself is the cause of this prosperity. Then he lives in a certain way so as to basically destroy that prosperity by reveling in it, and then is harshly corrected. And we are now living in a time when that harsh correction is coming to fruition. We're unfortunately living in that turmoil or the churn or whatever you want to call it, where the things we're seeing are coming our way. And I'm going to play some things about a court decision that happened in Oregon, which is quite interesting. But all of these things are against a backdrop of these problems are not new. We're just sort of recognizing them over the last couple of years. But they are deep-seated and they are long-standing and they are character. And I'm gonna hone in on something. I found this clip from the All In podcast, which every once in a while someone will say something and they do it as a throwaway line, and it really, really impacts me. I'm gonna call it out. I'm not gonna say it to you before we listen. I don't want to prime your ears for it. But they're gonna discuss the four men in the All In podcast. These are all tech guys, and they're kind of like libertarian-minded from what I can gather. They're talking about an issue and the way that Donald Trump has come in and thrown the National Guard into correcting criminal problems. In DC, attempting to do so in Chicago, same thing in Minneapolis. The discussion is happening in Oregon. It happened in Los Angeles. And there's this big pushback like, oh, we need to resist kings, right? The king that sends his army. We need to stop federal troops from coming in and doing this thing. There's a line in here that I'm going to break away when he says it that I want to hone in on, because it was what shaped all my thoughts this morning as we started this podcast. So anyway, these guys are talking about people recognizing the change that happened when they actually did this thing, when they actually started applying some federal force to a local criminal problem.
Did you guys see this interview with this woman in DC who was describing what it's been like in DC over the last 40 years and see the changes?
Yeah, she feels safe.
Elon retweeted it. Nick, I sent you the link on Signal. Just listen to what she says. It's really, to your point, Sachs, it's just such a no-brainer thing to do. The question now is, I think, is a political calculation. Who wants to take credit for it? Because everybody should be doing this.
Oh, yes, listen to this.
I'm always got to be the person to say it, and I don't want to be the person to say it. But Donald Trump has been president for 9 months. 9 months! And I'm seeing videos from Chicago, DC, where people are like, yo, I feel safe. My kids feel safe. This is the best thing he ever did for us. So what was happening all these years that this like literally I've known DC and Virginia to have this type of going my whole life, and I'm in my 40s, okay? Almost touching it. So what was really truly going on if a motherfucker became president 9 months ago and cleared that out with just a flick of the pen? I'm just thinking, like, did y'all really ever care?
Exactly. So I think that the point she's making there is we don't have to live this way. This is a choice, okay?
Yeah.
And we don't have to live in San Francisco with our main drag, our main street, Market Street, basically being an open-air drug market where you've got hundreds of people who are addicted, doing drugs in the street.
He said, we don't have to live this way. And he's right. We don't. But we do live this way in most urban areas. If you walk through urban areas in the United States, you see a significant amount of decay. And I, in my old job, did time in Albuquerque, and I did time in Portland, and we went to Pittsburgh, and we went through New York, and we did, DC and all the surrounding areas, Baltimore and so on. I went down the East Coast, and I saw Charlotte, and I saw the worst of that. We did stuff in Florida. I'm trying to think. We went to New Mexico. I've previously lived in places like Kansas City. I've seen all the major cities in California. We don't have to live this way, is what he said. And yet you do. And you actually do have to live that way at this point, because there's a lot of people that chose that path, and they did so deliberately. You guys in the chat are talking about Tennessee. Yeah, I've been to Nashville and I've been to Memphis as well. And I saw that there. Somebody chose to do this. It's not accidental. And so the solution of sending in a National Guard, which I keep like saying is like a tourniquet to stop something, it doesn't mean that it will not actually stop the problem. It will. But I was trying to make an analogy with when I was talking to my wife this morning, and it's like seeing somebody who has a disturbance, a mental disturbance, and they've decided to do self-harm, and they have a hold of a big machete or a sharp knife. And you look at them and they're fine. They're physically intact. They are not bleeding and in trouble. And then on their own volition, they reach and they deeply cut into a muscle group that has some blood vessels. Hopefully it's not arterial. So let's say it's a venous bleed, but it's a lot of dripping blood. And we go, oh my God, there's a real problem. You're a mess. You are covered in blood. There's all this issue. We got to stop that. And so we go, we put the tourniquet on, and yeah, it does stop that. But the minute you take the tourniquet off, it's going to go back to bleeding. Isn't that interesting? And what we're not talking about is the root cause, the intentionality of taking that knife and cutting. So if you didn't get that person some help, if the solution was put a tourniquet on right now, stitch up the problem, send them back out there with the knife, it will go back to the way it started. That's why I'm not a big fan of doing the federal game. I don't think it's the solution, but it might stop some dying in the short term. And I guess there's some utility and there's some value in that. But this has not turned the corner for people. You haven't changed the minds of the folks that live that way. Did the people who are seeing the changes in their cities, in Memphis, in Washington, D.C., have those people been like, all of the ways that we vote and all of the ways that we've organized ourselves and all of the values that we have espoused, have those things actually changed? Have we fixed that problem? Or are we simply coasting and enjoying the fruits of somebody came in and did a bunch of work and we didn't have to earn it? This was a study that I saw this morning. By 2021, 42% of young adults, compared with 29% of adults in total, were not religiously affiliated. This is a magnification of the problem that happened through my generation, where many of my colleagues, people my age, my generation, raised by boomers, are also not religious or not religiously adherent. There's a reason why you teach your children what right and wrong is. You teach them about consequences. You teach them about thousands of years of history of understanding that there is a way and there's an order. And if you don't actually participate in that, and if you think that you're better than that, then you will be humbled. And it doesn't matter whether you're a pagan and you believe in the Roman gods or the Greek gods, or whether you believe in the one God and you understand what happens. This has been a pattern that human beings have recognized for literally thousands of years. Humility before God is required. Believing that you can solve all the problems on your own and that you can just do whatever you want doesn't work. It's disordered, and it results in chaos and violence, and it results in human suffering and unhappiness. And it's always the same, and we always are surprised by it. The lessons have been learned. And if you shirk the lessons of the past, there's this old silly thing they teach you when you're in middle school. And they teach you something like to the effect of, if you don't learn history, then you're doomed to repeat it. Well, you're not doomed to repeat it. It just turns out that human beings and the natural world follow certain patterns. And so if you ignore certain laws, let's use the word properly, if you go against them, then you will have the natural consequence. If you ignore the fact that if you throw yourself from a cliff that you will fall, and you act as though it won't happen, it doesn't stop you from falling. And so watching people depart from a way that has been refined, I think that America, the reason why people were so excited about it, and maybe 1950s America is that nostalgic thing where people look back, and it's before the sexual revolution of the 60s, and it was before a lot of the protest movements, and it was right in the original part of the post-war boom. It's really interesting that 1950s America is looked at as sort of peak society, and all of our archetypal, what are they called? Like post-apocalyptic fiction, right? That's the thing that we wanted to preserve in the United States, the white picket fence, the American dream, the man who could go out and earn a living in the world and come back, and the wife is tending the house and hearth, and the children are respectful, and and they get disciplined, and they do a little bit of rambunctious stuff, but it's not really that bad. It's kind of interesting that that's the peak. It took 1950 years of crystallizing the lessons out of the ancient world and then also adding them to the failures and the feudal systems and the destructions of monarchies and the Enlightenment and the Renaissance and all of the learning of Western civilization under all those values. And they peaked sometime in the 20th century in the United States. We had all of the best ideas. They were distilled down into freedom and also following adherence to religiosity and saying this is the way that we must act. And we're not being able to do so freely here. And so they left the old world, right? Which is the way we were talked about it. They left Europe, these people that wanted to leave that behind and to try to perfect what they thought was the right answer. And they moved into the United States, which was a land that was basically a promised land. The entirety of the American experience, if you go back in literature, they explain it as being the myth of Edenic possibilities. That's the way that it's described in literary circles. That there was the possibility of America being the new Eden. Today, we talk about America being the new Roman Empire, which is a really fallen and diseased version because that's man sort of taking dominion on the earth. But at the time that people came here, the literature of the time and the romantics and all of the writings that went along with it, they said things like, this is the new Eden. It is a land that has abundant resources and infinite amounts of land, virtually infinite for the number of people that came here. And Americans were able to expand and explode across the continent in that way. And they kept building it up. And so there were difficult times as they were carving a living out of the wilderness. And then we just went, yeah, we're good with this. We're done with these things. We're going to just say that we've already figured it out. I was doing a running drill yesterday. This is not necessarily a logical conclusion, but there's a drill that I do that's called the acceleration glider drill. There's an Olympic coach that I'm following on my Garmin watch system. I'm trying to get back into running shape because I think we're going to have violence in this country. And it seems like being fit and being able to run might be really important in my life. And the acceleration glider drill is very specific in so much as you start from a walk and you get into a kind of a stutter step and you build up a pace of a sustainable run as you accelerate through into your running pace, whatever your pace is going to be. And what the acceleration glider drill is supposed to teach us is that we can easily and smoothly transition between speeds and when you run without injury. That's the goal. So you shorten up your pace, you increase your cadence, or you shorten up your stride rather, and you increase your cadence, and you get to the point where you are moving at maximum velocity, where you have top inertia that is carrying you forward. And then you move into the glider part of it. And the glider part is where you take that momentum and the speed and you allow yourself to just sort of coast. And you take advantage of the fact that your body is in motion and you can use that motion. And I do think very strongly that the time between the World War II ending and moving into this eventual decline is that coasting. The people in 1970 that were leaving churches to the point where, if you look at this graph that we have on the screen right now, this is 1972 to 2021. The people that were leaving Christian churches, a huge chunk of them were white Christians who were living a pretty privileged life, if we're going to use the terms that the left would use. What you see on the bottom is about a 16% non-white Christians. It remained relatively constant. But you saw a massive drop off, 20% roughly. Almost 20% dropped off in white Christians is what it claims. They were accelerating. They got to a point where things were really good. They had momentum in their favor. And these people abandoned religion for the same reasons that they did so in the Old Testament, if you read it, which is that times were good and man believed that it was because of him. And we looked around and said, yeah, this is us. We did all this, so we don't need God, obviously. And for a while, you can continue to coast on that momentum, and life is pretty good even as you leave. But as my buddy George Hill likes to say, payback is a medevac. Because eventually, things do catch up with you. And reality, just like gravity, the laws of nature, and the laws of this world, they're undefeated. Time is undefeated. And that slowed downhill eventually as more and more people left and less people were being able to coast on the benefits of a Christian society that was raised in a Christian society that had also had the default position that even if you ignored your kids, the default was that your neighbors were also living Christian values and that your teachers were also pushing out Christian values. that your government was being run by people with Christian values. And as that became less and less, we became less and less able to rely on that coasting momentum. That's my take on this. That's my strong belief right now. And I'm going to give you some evidence of something because I have never seen what I saw yesterday. And I don't know that we'll be able to repeat it. It's so freaking strange. It continues to be one of the most frustrating parts of my current existence is looking around and a thing that normally would have been called bigotry when I was growing up, just being an accurate self-assessment of how much our country has changed and not for the better in a really, really bad way. We're going to get to that as we're talking about threats. There are bad people around the world. There are bad people in the United States. There are Chinese server farms that are looking to scam you. Some of these things are self-funded. If you guys want to protect yourself and make yourself less of an easy target, the easiest thing to do is to just take yourself out of the pile. And one way you can do that is by signing up with my friends over at Patriot Protect. It's scarily easy. It's shockingly cheap for criminals and scammers and folks that want to do you harm to find your personal information online. The other day, I was able to find the exact senior Secret Service official who was targeted and launched this Chinese server investigation. I was able to find that person in about 90 seconds. I used to do that for a living, so I've got some skills, but it is not hard to do. Your home address, your phone number, your workplace, even your family members, all can be exposed with a few clicks. I've proven this over and over again. Data breaches can give sensitive information, but data brokers and these people search websites can be the bigger threat. If you want to make sure that you harvest and control those details, go to patriot-protect.com/Kyle. You will have a hard time finding me. Doesn't mean that people can't, but I have a pretty public profile and it's still relatively difficult to find me. Patriot-protect.com/Kyle. Use the name Kyle at checkout. You'll save yourself like 15%. An annual subscription is just $1 a month, so it's not very expensive. The goal is to make yourself a little bit less promising as a lead for some of these people that are trying to take things from you, whether they're trying to capture your identity or whether they're trying to call you up, pretend to be someone and take things from you. Patriot Protect is constantly scrubbing the internet from all these things. There's over 100 data broker websites. We did find out that a lot of these things are where our vulnerabilities are. Our online lives are significant and they are different than what they used to be. So if you guys are not protecting yourself with something, check it out. The one we use here at the Seraphin household, patriot-protect.com/KYLE. There's a link in the show description. This is what I've never seen before. I've never seen this anywhere. And this is probably some of the people that are doing the scamming in other countries. What in the actual hell is Diwali? Seriously. Kash Patel put it out first thing in the morning, and I went, well, okay, fine. He's a Hindu guy, so that makes some sense. You would expect to find that a Hindu man who apparently is dating a Christian girl and that they have some really chaste, devout relationship, whatever. That's going on. So yeah, fine. Then I saw this wave on X of every politician that you can think of on the left and on the right, all celebrating, wishing congratulations to this foreign concept, a Hindu festival of lights. I've never once seen that in the United States. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but I don't think that I've been out of the loop for the last 3 years. I've been pretty dialed in on a daily basis to what goes on. I've never seen this before. This is a dramatic shift and push towards celebrating a non-Christian holiday when almost all of our holidays were either American holidays or Christian holidays. And yeah, for those of you who are identifying on the screen, that's a picture of my governor wearing some sort of weird indigenous clothing to not America. It's funny that we use the word indigenous, but it's like indigenous to where? He's wearing an Indian costume. And there's a ton of Indian women wearing Indian costumes. And his wife is wearing some patronizing Indian cultural appropriation garbage. What the actual fuck is this? Seriously, the president issued a message on Diwali yesterday. I'm steamed at this. I went and looked it up because I'd never heard of this holiday. And I've heard of a lot of the BS holidays that are out there that recognize that are non-Christian, non-American celebrated holidays. The president of the United States, people on both sides of the aisles, the director of the FBI, all of these people, political figures and political appointees, are out there celebrating a freaking festival over a demon god. I kid you not, the Hindu Festival of Lights, with variations celebrated in other Indian religions, symbolizes the spiritual victory of dharma over adharma, light over dark, good over evil, knowledge over ignorance. In America, we celebrate that by celebrating that the Lord Jesus Christ came to America, or came to the world, rather. We like to think America, don't we? Came to the world and died for our sins. That's what Americans believe. 90+% believe that in this country for almost all of this country's history. This is a bizarre recognition. And it's one thing for you to go, oh, well, like, you know, certain people that have, let's say you're Tulsi Gabbard and that's your religion. Fine. Why is it out of your official government, like Republican, why is it out of your official account that you're putting this stuff out? I'm so blown away by this. It symbolizes light over darkness. We have this celebration already. It's called Christmas, which is an adaptation of a pagan holiday for whatever it's worth. Diwali is celebrated in Hindu lunisolar month Ashvin, which we don't have here, which is somewhere around mid-September or mid-November. The celebrations last 5 to 6 days, so we're in the middle of this thing. I had to look up what the hell it is. It celebrates deities and personalities, such as the being day of Rama returning to his kingdom in Ayodhya with his wife Sita and his brother Lakshmana after defeating the demon king Ravana. All of this stuff is foreign. None of this stuff is American. And when I say American, I mean it is synonymous. America has Christian imagery, Christian symbolism. We are a monotheistic culture. And these are polytheistic pagan rituals that are out there. Other regions connect the holiday to Vishnu and Krishna and Durga and Shiva and Kali and Hamuna and Kabura and Yama and Yami and Dakhvavarani and Vishnu. Look, what the shit is this stuff? Seriously, I have absolutely no idea where this came from. It came out of absolutely nowhere. My governor is doing some subservient thing here, and all of this seems 100% interested in sharing, like forcing foreign concepts into Americans. And that to me is a one-to-one. When you lose the religion that underpinned the foundation and the value systems of America. I got into a discussion with somebody online the other day. They were like, their make-believe religion is just as important as your make-believe religion. Is it? Where do you live? If you live in a Western country, then you are coasting, you are at the end of the acceleration glider drill of you have all the values and the privileges and all of the benefits of living in a Christian society, whether you believe in Christianity or not. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter to me. You can be a freaking communist. You can be someone who has zero concept of what Christian principles are, and yet you have all of your value structures underpinned by Christianity because you grew up in the West. Period. It's not even negotiable. All of the things that we value in this country come from one simple understanding. The fact that we even have a welfare system comes out of the concept of Christian charity. It's really wild to see this stuff. And so when I see people out there that are protesting Donald Trump, who recently said he wasn't sure if he was going to make it into heaven, that's a remarkably humble response from a man who's lived his life very publicly in a not humble way. And I'm not here to celebrate or lionize the guy one way or another. I have no personal investment in what happens with Donald Trump, other than I'd like him to be successful in the things that he promised in this country as he ran for office. And he's doing his best, it sounds like, to try to get some of that done. I think he could do more. But he's running into a culture of, we're going to celebrate Diwali, which I can guarantee if you asked him 10 years ago or 15 years ago, prior to being in the political sphere, when he was just a businessman that cared about politics, I imagine he would have had some choice, nasty things to say about that idea. And that he probably would have said exactly what I just said a second ago. What the F is that? We've moved in a bunch of people that have helped be part of the stealing of the American dream, because when you don't believe that your society is underpinned by a Christian sort of common expression, if you actually think that you can do it without Christianity making America the thing that it is, then of course you wouldn't mind bringing in people who are Muslim. Of course you wouldn't mind bringing people who are Hindu and celebrate Diwali. Of course you would think that cultural relativism is a truly natural thing to do because you've been coasting on the values and the benefits of a Christian society your whole life, and you didn't work for it. It's really interesting to me that there are videos of Chuck Schumer screaming about how Americans don't want to pay taxes. Our country is founded on the concept that we're not real crazy about authoritarian central government taking our money and doing things without us saying so. We don't like taxation without representation. And most Americans do not feel like they are very well represented by this federal government. Most of you also found out that the government doesn't do very much for you. Like, as the government shuts down, the critical features keep going on. Some of those people are getting paid. How many of you have noticed that, like, whatever Bureau of Statistical nonsense is not open today? Because that's happening. There's a government shutdown. It continues on, and no one knows. Does it mean that they're not funding programs like this? I found this from All In, and I couldn't believe it. I've got so many clips here, by the way. I grabbed like 100 clips before we started, and I've shown almost none of them. How about this? How many of you think that the free beer program in San Francisco is not coming from some amount of federal dollars? One way or another, money's fungible. The city of San Francisco gets federal dollars, so it's somehow funded by all of us, if you go back far enough. This sounds like a really compassionate way to operate if you have no values and you don't think that there's a difference between right and wrong. When I heard this, I was just like, I should share this with you. Apparently, some of you that might want to have a free beer should move to San Francisco for a little while. Of course, you'd have to live with San Francisco, and then you'd have to say, we don't have to live like this. I used to live some other way. There's a reason why this doesn't work everywhere.
You know, we have a program, I've mentioned this on the show before, but for those who haven't heard about it, to hear about the absurdity of these programs in San Francisco, there's a program called the Managed Alcohol Program. $5 million per year out of the San Francisco city budget is spent on this program, where you can walk into a hotel. They have free beer. You ask for a beer, they give you a beer.
What?
You drink the beer, you go out, you party, you come back, you get another beer. So they have all these studies that rationalize this program, which is, oh, this is a way to help alcoholics recover from alcoholism when they're homeless and they need this treatment. But here you can see this is from last year. The treatment being beer? Yeah, so the treatment is beer.
And it's backed up by research that I'm sure was paid for through federal grant dollars, because that's the way these things work. So you start thinking, like, who on earth made this happen? Well, it's in San Francisco, which means it's on the compassionate left side of our country. And these are the same people that are viciously opposed to a group of military guys coming in and shut down some of the violence in their own city because of this fatal suicidal empathy, this feministic compassion. And it works right up until it stops working and things get crazy. The federal appeals court has just approved the Trump administration, this was as of yesterday, to mobilize and deploy members of the Oregon National Guard, even though there's ongoing legal challenges in the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit, the famously left-leaning Ninth Circuit. They froze a lower division court order which blocked the Trump administration from doing this. By the way, this is the same thing that happened in Los Angeles. The 2-1 ruling, so this was an en banc review, like the small panel. Sorry, not the en banc. This is the panel review, rather. So the way that these appeals courts work is that you have a low judge at the district level. Then you end up in the appeals circuit. You get a judge. The judge can make a decision. You can appeal that, and you can get a 3-judge review sometimes on a panel review. And then that could be revealed to an en banc, which is all of the judges for the entirety of the circuit. And then it can theoretically go up to the Supreme Court. That's kind of the process as these things get appealed along. So these are ongoing. This is all of our tax dollars. This is what our attorneys that the United States is getting paid for is going towards. Says the statute delegates the authority to make the determination to the president, does not limit the facts and circumstances the president may consider in doing so. Judges Ryan Nelson and Bridget Bade, both appointed by Mr. Trump, said in the opinion. Of course, that's highlighted by CBS that they were appointed by Trump. The judges found that other than reviewing the president's determination with great deference, the district courts substituted its own findings, which means the judge basically inserted his own set of facts. Because just like we see Ketanji Jackson Brown do, a lot of these judges, they don't actually listen and then decide on the facts. What they do is they insert their own versions of the facts as they believe it. They're actually arguing on one side. So Lady Justice, not blind, it turns out, as many of us have found out. And that may be one of the most damning things for Americans that are trying to look at the system and they say, well, it's hopelessly corrupt. It's hopelessly corrupt because the only way our system actually works is if a good and moral people with the same values are administering it. We don't have that anymore. We've got all kinds of wild values. We've got people that don't agree with you on the fundamental issues of, what is a man or a woman? And what is human value based on? And why does it matter if we have justice or not? And how should we pursue it? And if you don't believe those things, if we don't share that, how are you going to fairly administer justice? This is the representative, the congressional representative for the 3rd District in Oregon, who represents at least parts of Portland, giving her take on why we need to resist this. And it's going to segue into this No Kings bit, because this group of people that are resisting things that are actually in their own benefit, and they're finding out whenever these National Guard troops show up, the population benefits from it. Just like, not bleeding out is beneficial to the person when you put a tourniquet on. There's a short amount of pain, but the fact that you get to live is kind of like the upside to it. But they're not interested in doing the work themselves. They're fighting against it, and whenever we take the tourniquet off, they'll go back to cutting themselves and bleeding again. And you can tell because this is who they elected. We don't have to live like this, but we have chosen to live like this in the places where these things are going on. And I think that was what was so telling to me. Men shocked that we don't have to live like this, and yet, yeah, we do, because this is how they talk.
Maxine Dexter, Oregon's 3rd, checking in after what I would say is an indefensible ruling by the 9th Circuit that opens the door to National Guard troops being deployed in our peaceful city. Let's just be clear. Portland is not lawless. We have been extraordinary in our resistance to Donald Trump's fairy tale about our city. We have remained peaceful, persistent, and clear that we do not bend the knee to Donald Trump and his wannabe kingmanship. And we will continue to be so. This ruling must be challenged, and we must remain steadfast in our peaceful resistance to Donald Trump, the tyranny he is trying to take onto our cities and across this country, and what I would say is an extraordinarily dangerous precedent by militarizing our city and moving towards a dictatorship. We will be united. We will remain peaceful. I was just in DC trying to work out how we were going to get out of this government shutdown, and I'm heading back to Portland now so I can be with you tomorrow. And I'll see you soon.
Great sign off. It's really inspiring. And as that deceleration, by the way, the acceleration glider drill that I was doing on the run, the end of it is that you drop off precipitously from the running speed as you just lean on inertia, because you can only lean on inertia for so long. At some point, you slow down to the point where you end up at a walk again. And then you have to start the process all over again. You have to go into a stutter step and a shuffle. The shuffle involves a lot more energy. It's a heart rate spike. Then you put yourself into the run. And as you're on the run, you can kind of, increase and glide and increase your speed. But it takes a tremendous amount of work. The reason that drill is of value is because you're simulating those changes where you have to put in tremendous amounts of effort to get up to the point where you can glide again. And these people are coasting. They're coasting to the inevitable stop. And it is real patchy and it's really ugly in these towns. They're scary to the point where I carried a freaking tomahawk when I was there in 2020, and I don't carry a tomahawk for no reason. And I don't carry a tomahawk regularly. I walk around all the time. I go for a jog sometimes completely unarmed. Sort of, whatever. But I don't walk around fearing for my life. I'm not the kind of person that looks around and assesses a non-dangerous situation to be dangerous for no reason. Portland was objectively scary because there were so many people there that were living in a lawless way that whatever this woman is talking about, I don't know if she just doesn't leave her house or she's surrounded by a security bubble at all times, but it's completely illogical. And all the people that go out and protest against this stuff, they are the same problem that wanted to trade all of the liberty that we would like to have in this country, which takes a tremendous amount of effort to maintain and keep that high level of liberty. The same people wanted to trade that immediately for fake safety. And the reason why we can't listen to these folks, I just see someone saying she lives in Beaverton. I moved out of Portland when I was in the hotels to go stay in Beaverton because Beaverton's super safe and nice. I actually really like Beaverton. I thought that would be great if that was what the whole state was like. Fortunately, it's not. These same people were 100% willing to trade their freedom for fake security simply because daddy government said so. They have trust in government in a way that I can never fathom having. It's really hard to trust in God, who we believe is, like most of you probably believe, is the supreme being that actually cares about our will. But we don't understand what the plan is. So that makes it really hard. These people trust in government, which is objectively shown that they do not care about your best interest. And this guy filming the No Kings protest, which, by the way, was peaceful. And I don't think these people were paid. I think these are a bunch of freaking useless idiots that stood out on the street and made their voices known. And good for them. Let them do it. They're free to do so. Because we still believe that you're allowed to do that in this country. That's how we know we don't have a king. Because you're allowed to protest and raise your voice. Here they are. But it's an also comparison to what happened in COVID.
When you look at the size of this crowd, never forget that these are the exact same people that voted to shut down your businesses. These are the exact same people that supported forcing you to take the shot and that supported you losing your job. Yeah, there's a lot of them. And they all want to hurt you. And they've made it very clear.
There's no question in my mind that that's true. Some of them. I'm going to lower the volume on this video. You guys see what we're seeing on the screen. This is a great reason to be on Spotify right now if you guys want to switch from being audio to video. There's a, I don't know what it is, front end loader, some kind of a tractor. It's at a beach in California. And it is pushing sand from the beach into a skate park that probably cost tens of millions of dollars to make. The land is incredibly valuable because it's right on the water. And it is filling the jumps, and it's filling all of the rail systems and all of this like really elaborate skate park design that the public put together so that kids could go out there and have outdoor recreation. And the county of Los Angeles got people to go out there and shut it down. And in order to make sure that it stayed shut down, they filled all of the jumps and all of the different features in the skate park with sand from the beach. Because it was unhealthy and dangerous for young people to go out and enjoy recreation and get fresh air. And instead they had to stay home and wear masks in their house was what they thought was going to happen. And lest anybody not follow through on what they wanted them to do, this controlling mechanism, we better make sure that they abide by these shutdown orders. And we're going to fill this damn thing in with sand. How long did it take to excavate that thing, by the way? Has it ever been excavated? I don't even know. You guys find out in the chat. Let me know. It's a truly incredible visual on how illogical and insane it is that you would take these people that look. This is what government does. Government goes and it enforces its own need. Somebody got paid to drive around in the fresh air in a tractor to fill in a skate park to stop people who were young from congregating when young people were not at risk. And I think that's why a lot of this stuff doesn't land in the same way. It cannot land in the same way, these protests. And the only people that are buying into it, there's a reason why young people are not there. They remember this. They remember not being in danger, not being at risk, and being told that you can't go to a freaking skate park that's on the shores of the ocean, which is probably the safest, most mobile air coming in from 1,000 miles of ocean. So you wonder, why are there so many boomers at the anti-Trump protest? This is an article that I found that is quite funny to me. There's a couple of reasons. This is from Business Insider. This came from April. So this is not a new phenomenon. And I found a bunch of really funny pictures. Angry old people, some lady holding a sign that says that. A group of people, this was overseas, actually, I think this is in Ireland, but they're holding a sign that says gray power, which is hilarious to me. Stop the Gestapo. Bring Abrego Garcia home. This is an old white lady who that guy would have punched in the face and killed. And then they're standing there with their American flags and their North Face, their North Face rain gear, their puffy coats from Patagonia. and their nice retirements. The joke is that they spent their kids' inheritance on a third or fourth house that they're not going to live in just in case they want to use it later, whatever. I don't much care about the idea of inheritance, but I'm amused by these people standing out there and lining the streets. For what? It sure seems like there's a lot of baby boomers attending the Donald Trump protests, says Business Insider. Are boomers worried about Social Security and retirement as tariffs tank the market? My accounts are still up, even though they're down a little bit. They're up year on year. I was looking through photos of the anti-Trump and the anti-Doge protests over the weekend. Remember those? There sure was a lot of gray hair. It struck me. By the way, I saw the same thing in Austin when I went down to the No Kings protest that happened in July. Struck me. It's different than different protests in the past. Black Lives Matter, Israel-Gaza protests. Younger people seem to be leading the charge. And this is my belief that these folks they're bored. And they believe in something that's not true. And they've walked away. They saw themselves walking away. Their country walked away from the value system. So now they're just left with moral relativism. If they had any sense, they would be protesting against worse outcomes for their children. Shouldn't that be something that affects them? Shouldn't they be upset about the fact that there's not affordable housing, that we let a bunch of illegal aliens in that are putting pressure on the housing market, that we've brought in a bunch of H-1B visas that are taking jobs that Americans would have otherwise been able to work, but you would have had to pay them more, so that's not advantageous? Or is it a bunch of boomer CEOs that are working in those roles that are more than happy to maximize profits? Because it is good for profits. It's just bad for America. And so that fundamental compact has been violated sometime between the time that these people were young adults and now that they're in retirement age. Sometimes that compact that America made with its workers, which is that if you show up and you do the right thing and you play by the rules and you work your ass off, then you're supposed to actually have a pretty good shot at this. Like, it's not guaranteed, obviously. Why is it that in my lifetime, it's gone from being normal? The house was 100 years old. It didn't make a single noise as you walked around and got to the stairs. It was absolutely silent. And I don't think there was a whole lot of structural reinforcement being done. They just built a house that was going to withstand really, really difficult, hard winters. And they did it 100 years ago with technology that is not even close to what we can build with today. There's no pride in ownership. There's no pride in workmanship. Maybe that's because we're doing this. We're too busy having pride for Diwali and bringing in people that do not have the same standard of living that Americans do. So rather than raise all these people up to American standards, what we've done is we have slowly degraded the standards of this country. And I hear people on the left more than anybody else screaming about why we have to protect the democracy, which is not real. We don't have that. They're screaming about all kinds of different things. And yet they have no ability to look back. This is how I know we're setting up for like cosplay nonsense. Do any of them remember what happened at the end of the last election cycle and why they didn't win? Here's a guy that breaks it down if you want to do a No Kings protest.
If you're not sure what to protest about next, fear no more, I got you covered. The next time your party leaders choose a presidential candidate behind closed doors without holding a fair primary, start a No Kings protest. The next time politicians try to force medical decisions on you, like take the jab or lose your job instead of giving you freedom of choice, start a No Kings protest. The next time they silence journalists or ban accounts all over social media or call dissent misinformation just to control the narrative, start a No Kings protest. The next time they send billions of taxpayer dollars overseas while Americans struggle to pay rent, groceries, and gas, start a No Kings protest. The next time unelected bureaucrats create laws through agencies instead of letting Congress vote, start a No Kings protest. The next time they try to control speech by labeling your beliefs as hate just to shut you up, start a No Kings protest. And the next time they pretend to care about democracy but silence their political opponents, you sure as hell better march your asses out on those streets and start a No Kings protest instead of always...
Yeah, right? Why are there so many boomers? I went to AARP's website, the American Association for Retired People. In June of 2020, they had an article entitled Marching for Social Justice, How Older Americans Are Demanding Change. I thought that was quite interesting. I thought, why would that be? And then I found out that who is this? This is is she the CEO? I think that's what she is. I was trying to figure out who she was here. I had it a second ago. A woman named Joanne Jenkins. This is also in the summer of 2020, during the summer of love. says, as we witness protests over racial injustice spurred by the horrific death of George Floyd and face down the coronavirus pandemic, we believe our nation is desperately in need of healing. And so therefore, AARP members, many of us are old enough to remember the struggle to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the devastating riots of 1968, the like of which we would never see again, we hoped. It's been 60 years since AARP stood up against discrimination. We championed civil rights and hate crime statutes and bans on predatory and abusive practices against consumers and so on and so forth. And so this woman goes on and writes why people must resist and draws a direct comparison to people that are now retired to the civil rights protest of their youth. A way to recapture that excitement of being younger and doing this thing. You got some free time. What should you do? They did it when they were in college. Let's do it again. She's a former CEO. I guess she had retired from that role at the end of 2024, which means at the time that this was written, as far as I can tell, it was written in 2020. She was, in fact, the CEO. They just updated this. I was wondering why they removed the CEO thing. I knew she was there. Isn't that something? And of course, she's a very light-skinned black woman, it looks like. And she's very, very fascinated by this idea. But what the hell does AARP have to do with any of that stuff? It turns out, may have been leftist from the beginning. There's all kinds of different references they have here about things that they've tried to push. I'm not real crazy about the idea of pushing hate crime statutes and the civil rights laws that they have. Isn't it funny? 1964, the Civil Rights Act. 1965, the immigration. They changed the rules on immigration in this country, and we've had a slow decline and an importing of people that do not have coherent values with American values. Again, it doesn't matter if you're actually a Christian person, if you live in a Christian society and you believe in all the same rules. This is the point that I'm going to make to you. If you believe that the West is best, that this country is best, if you believe that like this country is exceptional for certain reasons, whether you understand what those reasons are or not, the founding and the ideals and the values that were put there, they're not negotiable. They come out of Western Europe. That's where they trace their roots back to. You go talk to any anarchist or communist or any of these people that want fairness. What made you think it was be fair? These ideas don't exist in other places. It's really funny to me. Whenever you have a discussion with someone who is a hard leftist, a Marxist, communist, right? What do they value? The working class, the poor, and all this stuff. It's like, why do you think that those people have any dignity or they matter at all? What makes you think that? And they can't really answer. The answer is that you don't get any of those ideologies unless you get Christianity first. And the funny thing is what they do is then they take the underpinning reason for those values and they just keep the values out loud. And they forgot what was exceptional or great or why it mattered. Bill Maher actually figured this out too, for whatever it's worth. Like, I think old school liberals kind of get it. That's why they didn't ever have the same sort of anger or disgust with religion. He's part of the generation that walked away from it. But at least he understands that there is something special about this country, and there would be if we all kind of agreed on it. If you don't celebrate it, then you're part of the problem.
Seriously, this is a serious problem for Democrats. Less than 1 in 4 Democrats under 30 say they're proud to be an American. 54% say they're embarrassed by it. Embarrassed? Like America's your mom picking you up at school? You're embarrassed to be an American? Well, guess what? The feeling's mutual. Because you have no perspective. Is America perfect? No, of course not. No country is. Although don't get Tucker Carlson started on Russia. Globalize the intifada is the catchphrase that's really catching on these days, as if worldwide suicide bombing and cosplaying Islamic revolutionaries is the answer to our problems. At an AOC Bernie Sanders rally in Idaho last month, someone threw a Palestinian flag over an American flag, and the crowd erupted in approval. What should have happened after that is one of the adults on stage should have told their young, loyal followers, this is not a symbol of freedom. This is.
They can't do that, though, because they need their votes. So they are basically chasing votes from people that are not, and rather than educating their base, they're just following it. And the base is completely without principle. And it's also amazing that the old people, you talked about a Bernie Sanders and an AOC rally, right? I got Bernie Sanders from the No Kings rally. Doing a Bernie Sanders, talking about this great country. How is it compatible with the things that he actually ends up saying about this country? They just make things up. They're not pinned by reality. They're unburdened by what has been historically in this nation. So they're selling this bizarre fantasy. And that only happens if you have people that don't have the values underpinning it and they don't have any knowledge about historically what the hell they're even talking about.
In 1776, with extraordinary courage, the founders of our country announced to the world that they would no longer be ruled by the King of England. A king who had absolute power over their lives. They demanded freedom. And to bring that about, they fought a bloody war against the British Empire. And in 1789, after winning that war, they did something extraordinary. They established the first democratic form of government in modern history. They said loudly and boldly to the entire world, no more kings.
That's really inspiring if it were true, but it's not. They didn't actually create a democratic form of government. They created a constitutional republic that actually set a huge buffer zone in between the people, the mob, the masses, the sort of the swing of the crowd, and the actual governance of things. And they meant it to be very inappropriate, like very inefficient and take time, and to be filtered through levels of representative democratic little areas. It was supposed to be represented by a bunch of states, and the states were actually supposed to be much more powerful. So who was the closest thing to a king that we've ever had in this country? As far as I can tell, they've all been Democrats. And I don't care about parties, except that's just what happens. The people who espouse leftist values always lean towards that totalitarian instinct. FDR. You want to go back and talk about kings? How about FDR? The guy died in office, and he was the first person that didn't actually do what Washington set up, that they had to pass a constitutional amendment to make sure that someone didn't do it again because precedent wasn't good enough for FDR. Everybody else had only done 2 terms. That was the way we did it. Boom. I'm going to go 4. I'm going to just keep running until I die in office. And the folks that have done this game, that have made the increase of executive power part of the way that they operate, they seem exclusively left, and then they're just mad that Donald Trump is sort of playing the same game because Donald Trump is a Democrat from the 90s. He's doing the same thing that they all would do. Barack Obama was famously bad about that and said things out loud like it's good to be king. Maybe not. Who are the people that buy this stuff? I guess they look like this lady. I don't know. I don't know how you get people to sign on board with this unless they know nothing, and this lady seems pretty terrifying to me. This is a young woman who I assume, based on her age, her children cannot be that old. And she chose to spend her birthday at a No Kings protest rally. She knows nothing, and she wants to see the current president dead because she somehow thinks that that would result in a benefit to her or her kids. Like, we've narrowly avoided a political assassination over the summer of last year, which is very, very near. They just found a structure or a hunting stand that was set up near Air Force One yesterday. And a discussion of that was ongoing through the media, whether or not it was like an intention, whether somebody was trying to go up and take a shot at Donald Trump. This lady is actually encouraging that stuff. Does she have do these people have any idea what it looks like when we start getting into a time of political assassinations where we just kill off the people that we don't like? Because the people who have the ability to do that and do it efficiently, they all lean on not doing that on purpose. Does this lady look like she's going to fight any war? She's about 100 pounds overweight for anybody that's not watching.
So this is your birthday.
Yes.
So you came out on your birthday. You thought it was important. Tell me why.
Absolutely, because I have 2 little boys who deserve a bright future of freedom and democracy. And this is a nightmare that I'm living in. And I'm here to make a difference and to be loud and proud. And there's no other way I'd want to celebrate my birthday than with my parents and my best friend fighting for our country.
So, okay, so for a birthday present, what do you hope happens? You know, you wake up tomorrow morning.
I hope that I see the obituary that we're all waiting for tomorrow. That's what I hope for.
Yeah. you wishing that President Trump is dead?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Did you see how many gray-haired, blue hairs, as my grandma used to call him, walked behind her. She's living in a nightmare right now while she stands there, well-dressed, obviously more than well-fed. No tyranny, in a park that looks beautiful, ignoring her children. She's out there doing that on her birthday. If my wife had asked me, hey, can I go down to the No Kings protest? I'm going to go do that. I'd be like, no, I'm taking your car keys. Like, you must be drunk. There's no way. You're going to go celebrate your birthday standing around with your friends, a bunch of other, like, where's her husband? Where's that woman's husband to tell her, nope, that's a stupid use. We're going to go to the park with our children and we're going to ride bicycles. And you need to get on a bicycle and probably not get off for the next couple weeks. Let's see what we can do about this fitness. You don't look healthy. Where's that? Has that woman ever been told no to all of her terrible ideas? And it results in stuff like this. Same thing. This is coming out of Portland. This is a Pacific Northwest protester. One is, I hope for an obituary and I hope that Donald Trump dies, was what that lady said. This guy wants to actually be involved in it. I think this is a man.
Who are you going to kill?
Nazis.
Who do you define as a Nazi?
What do you mean? It's pretty...
In this context, who's a Nazi?
Stephen Miller's a Nazi.
So you're going to kill Stephen Miller?
If I had a chance, yeah, I would.
I don't know if that's something I'd say on camera, bro.
Nice to see that you got the sort of the pro-Palestine LARPer with the headscarf on there. So that's all fun. These people, you know, look, are they necessarily dangerous right off the bat? No. But this pervasive mentality of being able to say this out loud and normalizing it, it's growing. I see more and more of it. None of these people would have said that in 2020, even though 2020 was pretty aggressive and violent. And I know that if any of you said that, or if I said it here, we're getting the door kicked down. So why are they still going with it?
You gotta grab a gun. We gotta turn around the guns on this fascist system. These ICE agents gotta get shot and wiped out. The state machinery, that's a full display right there, has to get wiped out.
The Democrats are kamikazes right now. They're kamikaze pilots right now. They have nothing going. They have no future. They have incompetent candidates. I mean, I looked at Crockett, Jasmine Crockett. She's a very low IQ person. She's polling okay in the Democrat Party. I can't even believe it. AOC is, I watched her the other day. It's like, you got to be kidding. This is not going to make our country great. And for us to have a communist mayor, it looks like we're going to in New York. He's not a socialist. He's a communist. And it'll be very interesting.
I don't know if it's going to be interesting. It's going to be something. What did he call them? Kamikazes? You're not wrong, right? It is kind of a suicide pact to be able to go and play that game. You don't walk out of that alive. You think you're going to go and kill off, the deputy chief of staff or something like that, and you say that out loud. Like, that's a death mission. You don't come out of that. Kamikazes are really dangerous, though, because they've given up the desire to come home. They don't plan on returning. That's a one-way trip. So people who are suicide bombers, we haven't seen that in this country. And wouldn't it be kind of scary to think that Donald Trump is correct in assessing them, even if he didn't mean it that way? Kamikazes, yeah, they crash into the deck. They drop their payload of ordnance, and then they don't return. They use their entire aircraft as the weapon. We haven't seen that. Most people want to try to survive the things that they do in this country if they want to go and make change, because they expect to be on the other end of it. Kamikazes have to believe in something like a higher power. That higher power has to mean that what they're doing is moral and righteous. That's going to bring them some sort of a glory and honor. Be kind of an interesting statement if his sort of passing diagnosis of saying that these people are not effective and that they're making bad decisions are actually really probably diagnostic to the kind of decisions they're really making. I got a couple more clips before we wrap it up here. To remind you guys, we do this on Spotify. If you're listening and you have any issues with the stream, you can always go back and do that. If you have any issues on Rumble or on X or on YouTube, you can find us on KyleSerafinshow.com for the Spotify ad. For the Spotify show, and then we'll play an ad real quick right here from them. You can also support us over on Locals at KyleSerafin.com. That's the way to get that done. I sounded like Alex Jones in that cadence, didn't I? I just felt like that. It was like, it's kind of the Alex Jones version. I'm kind of blown away that he's honing in on the sort of low IQ and the death wish version of this. It's a growing problem. This has to weigh on him. Dan Bongino went out and took some credit for some things the other day. It was kind of interesting. He was talking about the hunting stand piece. I want to play that out there because this is a growing issue. When people don't expect to come back from it, like what? Like Thomas Crooks, that's a one-way trip, right? Ryan Routh probably could have been killed if the Secret Service could shoot. So that would be the end of that. You'd expect that if you got up there and do this, that kamikaze attitude, Trump might be onto something with that specific naming of this phenomenon.
But here's what happens with this. Let me walk the American public through how this works. The FBI is not responsible, obviously, for the security plan of the president. That's the purview of the Secret Service. However, if the Secret Service finds something that they believe could be criminal, I want to emphasize it could be, we take over. We have what's called an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding with the Secret Service, where we will investigate after that. I was on the phone yesterday, back and forth with the D2, the Deputy Director over at the Secret Service, Matt Quinn, great guy. They were very concerned. Their security sweep discovered this hunting stand. The director was, Kash Patel, was directly involved right away. I'm on the email chain with him. He ordered an immediate response. I believe we had our plane flown down there. This hunting stand was appropriately dismantled, being flown to our lab. I believe it's there right now. And all of the forensic tools we have, from digital tools to biometric tools, they are all going to be applied to try to find out who put this up there and why.
Mr. Deputy Director, big picture here, the snipers have become a problem. The first assassination attempt against the president, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the attempted assassination of our ICE officers, that's the new tool now. They're attacking from the top.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a new tool. It's an old tool that may be used more often by folks who realize that there's some tactical advantage to distance and cover. The Secret Service has had to make a lot of modifications, Lawrence, given that this tool was obviously used or attempted to be used multiple times. They've expanded their security perimeter, how they do. I'm very close friends with the director over there and the deputy director, and some of those modifications have been made. And I think you saw the modifications with the discovery of this hunting stand set up in the tree outside of West Palm Beach. But yeah, there's no room. This is a zero-fail mission, Lawrence. No time for a BS here. It's zero fail. You can't have.
Isn't it fun when Dan gets to talk about the thing he knows about, protecting the president? That's it. Some of you guys were saying, oh, it sounds like he's really competent. What I heard there was immediately we had to praise Donald Trump's leadership. We had immediately to go out and say that Kash Patel is personally responsible for executing the mission of sending the plane down and doing stuff that happens autonomously. Like, you don't need to tell people to do their freaking job at the FBI that do that stuff. So that's kind of funny. And I guess all of that goes to my ongoing belief that this guy's about gone. That's, when you're a short timer, you start hating where you're at. You start being led. I think that what we're seeing, interestingly enough, in that little clip is, and there's another little clip I'll play you in a second here that kind of proves my point. We're seeing the celebration tour. Like, I did a really great job. There were a bunch of bad black eyes early on where they looked ridiculous, and the Epstein stuff and all these other nonsense. All of those things were bad. But when you're on the final days of your assignment, you're about to be able to cash out, you start feeling better. And so they're doing the thank you tour right now. They're letting him go out and say what a great job he did with this thing called Summer Heat, which is something FBI offices do every single day. The step up of federal enforcement. None of these things make any sense to me. I actually saw him arguing with Gavin Newsom yesterday on X, which is a classic sort of Dan Bongino thing to do. And he was making the argument that crime in San Francisco is down. This is the same guy who ran a podcast which pointed out the same things that you and I have pointed out here on the show, which is that these left-wing mayors and these left-wing governors have stopped reporting statistics to the FBI and claiming a victory under Biden or claiming it under Trump. It's silly. We know that left-wing cities still have a lot of violence. They still have these kamikaze-type mentalities. There's still plenty of people that are doing bad things. To try to say that now that we're in power, we're going to claim credit for it when the same debunking can be done, I don't know what's more foolish. Trying to argue with Gavin Newsom about who's responsible for lower crime in San Francisco, or the fact that both of you are ignoring the thing that both of you would have said a year ago if you were trying to do it, which is that, yeah, we just stopped reporting the FBI stats are bad. In any case, we're seeing Bongino kind of get out there and get another little media tour. I think this is prep for him to say, yeah, I did a great job. And so this is what I'm going to put my mark on. A very solid Operation Summer Heat. The summer is gone. I've slowed down the crime in America. I solved murder. in blue cities or whatever the heck nonsense they're going to claim. And job well done. Go back to your family now. Good and faithful servant. I think that's what we're seeing. And that's what this little segment is reminding me of.
The president early on with regards to this crush and violent crime, whether it's in San Francisco, Chicago, any other major city, early on, this is kind of the untold story of this op. I get appointed, announced in February, come in March, Cash is there a little bit earlier. President brings us in early, and in essence, this is kind of the behind the scenes, guys. He says to us, you know, listen, I'm a builder. I'm in a lot of these big cities. He has just zero tolerance for violent crime. He just does. He drives around Washington, D.C. on these OTRs, off the record movements. He sees homelessness, crime. He can't stand it. He says, what do we got to do to fix this? And we basically lay out a bunch of things. And his answer is very simple. President's like, go get them, boys. Go get them. That was it. Like, you do what you have to do. So we got in there, Cash and I, and we brought in the best SACs, special agents in charge across the country, guys who had forgotten more about crime and enforcing it than most people ever know. They've done this their whole lives. One of them we pulled in from Phoenix. He had an amazing job out there. We said, hey, his name's Joe. I said, Joe, you tell me what we need to do to go get these demon savages off the street. Tell me what we need to do. We brought in a violent crime roundtable of the best crim agents in the country. We figured out a battle plan, how to kind of water balloon. You know, when you squeeze a water balloon, you get a bulge. How do we bulge agents here and then bulge agents there? And we cleaned up at the president's direction, the director and I, with the SACs and the agents in the field. We water ballooned around the country and made, get a load of this, guys. This is going to trip you out. 28,000 violent crime arrests in 2025, and the year's not even over. You say, oh, well, what does that mean? Put it in comparison. Prior 3-4 years, the FBI under prior leadership had averaged about 15,000, 16,000. We're at 28,000. 28.
That's incredible. Wow. How many of them were actually were indicted? And how many of them were just deported because those were all ICE arrests? How many were FBI participated in and not actually FBI operations in totality? Did he really just say that they got a roundtable of the best SACs in the Bureau, all the people that were promoted by Chris Wray, and then he put them all together at a table and he found the best of the people that were like remaining that worked under Wray's FBI? Is it not weird to anybody else that we're seeing this? This is why I think this is all fake. This is why this is all theatrical to me. It's why the people that are running our government are not serious in any way, shape, or form. And we're not getting any better anytime soon. Dan Bongino said it was an irredeemable organization. They needed total personnel warfare. They needed to get rid of everybody that touched any number of things. Now he's cheerleading for it because it's part of his reputation. These people go up and set up these false premises. He just told you 28,000 arrests, patting himself on the back, said Donald Trump said, go get them, boys, like go get it. Like this is a team thing. That's not how this works. You can't even solve local crime from an FBI level. There's 14,000 agents. They're allowed to do long-term, complex criminal investigations on things. How many of the problems that existed under Biden still are there? How much inflation is still there? How quickly will these people turn around and kick down your doors when the next Democrat administration is in? Did they fix any of the systemic problems? No. So all of them are doing the laser pointer with us, and it doesn't matter whether it happens on the left or the right. It doesn't matter whether they trick boomers or they trick people my age or anybody else. If you're cheering on this stuff, then you are the mark. Like the PSYOP is really, it's pervasive, it's unrelenting, and it's effective. That's why it's out there. That's how you get the same people that cheered on filling in a freaking skate park with sand are now out there crying about tyranny because Donald Trump is rounding up people that came here illegally. And watching people in our government like participate in professional knob slobbery, which is a term I'm going to coin. It's gross. It doesn't matter whether they're slobbing the knobs of people that are going to be future citizens as H-1B visas with the Diwali thing. Doesn't matter if they're out there cheering on this stuff. How about this is a little kind of a tail end clip for you here. This is Mike Johnson trying to act like the people that are the enemy in this country are all terrorists and communists and Marxists, like they're not real, like they're somehow funded by something. That ignores the fact that there are a bunch of people that are regular human beings, like that chubby mom who was on the screen, who actually believe this stuff. They've bought into it. Like the PSYOP is their reality. And some of that comes from the Chinese server farms that are out there that are manipulating the algorithms to make you think certain things, that are feeding you significant amounts of bot type traffic that's all garbage. And some of it is like they've actually just internalized it. And that's what they believe now. And they're willing to fight on it. Here's Mike Johnson. Like, basically, he's like, I don't know if this is a straw man or a red herring. I can't find it. It's kind of both. They're pretending like the problem is not a real problem, and they're making it this lampoonable thing when it's in reality we have a godless contingent of this country. We don't share the same values with them, and it's not going to be fixed by simply like having an election. That's the problem. As you guys are saying in the chat, here's Smithers.
I wanted you to listen to something, see if you've heard this before. Here is our Speaker of the House on Friday. Listen.
They're going to descend on our Capitol for their much anticipated so-called No Kings Rally. We refer to it by its more accurate description, the Hate America Rally, okay? And I'm not sure how anybody can refute that. If you think about what's going to happen here tomorrow, you're going to bring together the Marxists, the socialists, the Antifa advocates, the anarchists, and the pro-Hamas wing of the far-left Democrat Party. That is the modern Democratic Party. That's where they've gone. And
Okay, stop.
Hate America.
Did you hear this? Have you heard that before? Listen to this.
I put this up and said, radicals, Islamists, communists, and socialists will work together against Israel, against capitalism, and work together to overturn stability. There are radicals.
This is.
That was Glenn Beck saying the same thing in 2011. I thought it was interesting that his first thing he was interested in was it was going to work over to screw over Israel. That was his first problem. Mike Johnson kept doing this talking point, the I Hate America rally. It's not that they hate America. It's that they hate the values that we believe are American values. They have their own concept of it, and it's been forged over, a couple of decades now. And it's been well established that that's where these people are at. So to act like they don't have the same skin in the game, or that they don't have some sort of stake, or that they're not real, there's a huge push right now. We're going to do an interview later on this week with Aaron Stevenson, who does a lot of social media analysis. He's a former DHS analyst, and he's talking about to act like these are not actually, to say that these are all funded by Soros and that there's outside dark money that makes it happen, is to belittle the actual opposition and act like it could be cured if you just did it. The same way that Bongino just said, we could just clean it up. We could just send in the FBI to solve the problem. If we could just arrest the Antifa cells. It's much bigger than that, because people actually believe this stuff. And millions of them do. And I'll show you one more thing in a second here with the EBT thing, because I think that's why. When you've made so many people reliant on this government and made them think that the job of the government is to make sure that they stay alive, versus what most of us think, which is that we're supposed to work for a living and we begrudgingly have to give a piece of our paycheck to the government, that's a totally different animal. We're dealing with very, very different types of people in this country. And we are no longer ideologically compatible because we've lost the fundamental underpinnings of what those values came from. By the way, the Catholic Church was a big chunk of that, and the Marxist liberation theology that came out of Latin America in the 80s and then started pervading here and got here in the 90s and the early 2000s. It was a big purveyor of it. So my church is a big problem of this. But to make light of it and act like it's not a real thing, to call them the Hate America rally is really, it's silly, and it is not taking them as seriously as Donald Trump accidentally did by calling them kamikazes.
I'm joined now by the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, right here in the studio. Speaker Johnson, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be with you. Thanks.
So let's start with the No Kings rallies. You called these Hate America rallies. What do you mean by that?
Well, that collection of folks that I listed were certainly part of it. We congratulate them on a apparently violent free speech exercise. I was a First Amendment lawyer for 20 years. We defend that right. But the irony of the message is pretty clear for everyone. If President Trump was a king, the government would be open right now. If President Trump was a king, they would not have been able to engage in that free speech exercise out on the mall, by the way, which was open because President Trump hasn't closed it. In the last shutdown, 2013 era, President Obama closed the National Mall, it closed all the national parks, didn't allow people to engage in all this. So, I mean, they needed a stunt, they needed a show. Chuck Schumer needs cover right now. He's closed the government down because he needs political cover, and this was a part of it.
All right. The scariest thing that I see is that you're going to act like these people are not serious, and then you're going to do the thing that's going to really cause some serious actions. Here's a story from KATU2 ABC News out of Oregon. Approximately 757,000 Oregonians could lose SNAP benefits in November. 750,000 people in Oregon receive food assistance through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, and they could lose their benefits starting in November. The Oregon Department of Health and Human Services started notifying families on Monday that they would not receive SNAP benefits after October the 31st. The House Committee on Agriculture put out a tweet this morning that had 600 views when I saw it. Nobody saw this. saying that 42 million Americans depend on federal government food subsidies to feed their families. And my feed is completely inundated with people that are talking about escalating versions of violence like this. And so this is where I think the rubber meets the road. When you start acting like these are not real human beings out there who have been cultivated to believe certain things and feel entitled to the benefits they've had, that's when things are going to get real screwy. And so this may be a real spicy next couple of weeks. This is my take on it. I'll be happy to find out otherwise. They'll probably open the government again and fund everything. That's usually what happens. But check out a couple of these videos, which should make you a little bit concerned.
Hey, TikTok. So I was scrolling to TikTok and I just saw that next month us low class people, our lower class, we ain't gonna get no motherfucking food stamps. Let me tell you know how many people I have seen saying that they're gonna go to Walmart and steal? Like, they don't know that we don't give a fuck. Like, either you're gonna give us food or we're gonna take that bitch. Why are they doing this? Like, why are they trying us like this? Like, come on now. We're trying to survive out here. And the way that we survive is by taking shit. So, get it together. Get it together, MAGA. Because y'all motherfuckers are the ones that have more food, that need more food stamps than us Latino and blacks. So, good luck to ya. And you voted for this.
She's drinking some sort of store-bought juice, which I don't think that I generally consider myself able to afford. And that woman is 200 pounds overweight. That's fairly incredible to be on food stamps and to have that sort of weight. And this is not a unique experience. We're going to show you a couple of them. So here's a few of these people. Again, that woman out there making sort of claims, we'll just go and steal it. This is where it gets weird, because if that were to act like those are not real people, there's too many of these videos gone out. And of course they have huge amounts of viral views where people are like, oh, got it. It's been normalized. That's a real possibility. No! 42 million people are on these benefits.
Just finding out there's no EBT next month. My heart. There's no EBT next month. What is this pumpkin man doing, bro? Why the fuck we gotta starve on Thanksgiving? Are you dead ass, pumpkin man? It's like, yo, it's just like you gotta like, why the fuck there's no EBT next month? Why the fuck November though? It couldn't be January, Feb, March it? Why the fuck does it have to be November? Why November? Yo.
It's the fact that Trump think he doing something by not giving food stamps next month. Like, bitches don't have purses and bags. Bitch, we're gonna eat, and we're gonna eat good. On your dime, ho. Yeah, on the big corporation's dime. Because what? Food stamp ain't stopping no motherfucking show. You wait and see how hungry people get and see what the fuck happen. Bitch, let me tell you something. Them junkies that be on bottom on North Avenue is going to have a field motherfucking day. They're going to make their money on. Okay? You ain't stopping shit. Okay? Because as long as I got a purse, a car, bitch, some car keys, my baby's just going to eat if I have to. I'm going to do what I got to do. Catch me if you can.
I went from having $1,100 EBT every month, and that was just with 4 children, to 0. Now, how the fuck am I going to feed my children? Was the first thing that came to my mind. Then my inner voice was like, girl, you been feeding these children with or without food stamps before you got food stamps, so you could still do it. Like, I told y'all I was going to take y'all to a food bank with me. When I tell y'all I just left a community event, I'm about to go to another one. I came home to take a break because, baby, it's hot out there. I told my children to Google some food banks that may be open or maybe open next week, so I could take y'all with me. When I tell you they Googled it and they was taking me there, they was GPSing me, tell me why I pulled up at the food bank and with no food bank. So y'all got to be careful with a GPS take y'all. Because I went to the food bank and it was nothing there but an abandoned building on the other side. But the dot where the pin where the food bank's supposed to be at, it looked like where Pennywise live at.
I don't know what any of that means. I couldn't understand most of what you just heard, but I figured I'd share it with you because there's 42 million people in this country that are catching subsidies that may not starting on November 1st. And people get pretty desperate when they can't feed their kids. There's a lot of them that have a lot more threats of violence in there. So I went ahead and held off on those. All these people seem like they're able to record. They all have a phone. They all have like houses that they can live in. And they all seem like they probably have the ability to go out and get a job, do that. Life's hard. It's a lot harder when you make bad decisions. It turns out if you don't actually have the values that would underpin you making good and responsible decisions, and if you have not been part of a community that wants to support you when you fall on hard times or bad times, when you actually have real neighbors that know your name and know what's going on with you, or people that are within your church structure that will step up and raise money for you or help feed you on momentary times of difficulty. We shouldn't need a federal government to support 12% or 15% of our entire national population, because all that means is that for every dollar that you make, a huge chunk of like what you're paying into theoretically for what? The military, for federal law enforcement, for border, for air traffic control and things like that, highway systems, like a chunk of that is being siphoned off to go feed people that look like they don't need to eat for a couple of weeks, minimum. It's just, I don't know, it's wild. And all these people, as you guys have pointed out, they've got hair and they've got nails and they've got cosmetics and they've got all these sort of like non-necessary accoutrement. It's bad decision theater. So I don't know, we're subsidizing that at a really terrible level. And that's because we don't have the values that we used to have in this country. Like, I don't know why hard work and doing without. My kids are reading the Laura Ingalls Wilder stories and all the things that those families had to do with that, where the dad wouldn't eat because it was the right thing to do to make sure his kids fed. I don't want that for anybody, but at the same time, like that was American and an American experience when there were people that were actually out there just carving out a living. We have it so good right now that we're coasting into some real hard times again. So we'll probably get to see what that looks like on the other end at some point. All right. That's what I've got for today. That's a lot. That's a heavy thing. This is what happens when I don't do a show for one. Thanks very much for watching. If you guys want to catch the replay or if you want to share it with somebody, KyleSerafinshow.com to get the Spotify piece. You'll probably get it without any glitches. No Amazon Web Service issues on that once we've recorded it. You can follow us over on Locals, KyleSerafin.com. That's where those of you who knew that we weren't going to do show found out first, because that's where I post a lot of the stuff on there. So if you want to be part, KyleSerafin.com. It's free. If you're watching, like the videos, we'd appreciate that. Share it with a friend if you're so inclined. Subscribe to the channel so you can see us again soon. And I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. I'm not going to do any more videos. All the videos I have are bad. My entire hopper is full of like ugly, bad videos. So anyway, today's probably a good day to buy ammo, to go train yourself, make sure your fitness is in order, or get started on a fitness plan, whatever that looks like, so you don't end up like one of those EBT models there. Can I say that? All right. God bless you. We'll see you guys on the other end. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.